Yeah. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today I wanted to bring a very special review to you guys because it is the 15th anniversary, hard to believe, of Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, starring Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Heath Ledger, Gary Oldman, Aaron Eckhart, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and of course Morgan Freeman. Look, I'll be honest, I guess I was a dumb kid and I didn't see The Dark Knight when it came out in theaters, and maybe I just wasn't into movies at that point in time. But as the years progressed and I really got into film, obviously I knew The Dark Knight was one that I had to see. I heard so much about it, and I don't even know if I loved it at first, but the more I learned to appreciate film, the more I kept coming back to this masterpiece. It easily became one of my favorite movies of all time, and without a doubt, the greatest comic book film to ever exist. I mean, we might as well get that out in the open before I start this, but I think that's pretty obvious that that was going to be the case anyway. I've talked about it in the Nathaniel Ahart and Company's Top 100 Greatest Films of All Time series. It made the top 10, coming in at number 6. So obviously, many people believe this is not just the greatest comic book movie of all time, but one of the greatest movies of all time. And obviously, I've already talked about it, so I won't go as in depth perhaps as I usually would. But I got to see this in theaters last weekend, and I was really happy about that. Though I was rushing. It was not a great situation. And I missed the first couple minutes of the bank robbery scene. I will say I'm a bit remiss because of that, because I wanted to say I saw the whole movie in theaters from top to bottom, and it was more like 99.9%. But regardless, I did get to see it in theaters, and my goodness, this movie still holds up to this day. There's a reason why this is considered one of the greatest crime films, too, of all time, because what Nolan did with this was so brilliant. You know, took the Michael Mann-esque style and made a compelling, gritty, dark thriller out of this that isn't really a comic book movie as much as it's populated by comic book characters, and you know, follows similar threads of stories that were told in the comics, like The Killing Joke or The Long Halloween, I believe. And just the way these stories come together is really absolutely amazing, because this really is very Shakespearean in its scope and its tragedy. Obviously, going to get into spoilers for this movie, but I mean, who hasn't seen it at this point, right? And look, I mean, just from the opening heist sequence, I think it sets up the character of the Joker so brilliantly. Just the way he gets all these guys to do his deeds for him, and then slowly they cancel each other out so they can get their own share, and their own greed kind of consumes them. And I love that was just how brilliantly structured the Joker's entire plan is throughout this whole film. And of course, the introduction to the legendary Heath Ledger in one of the greatest performances of all time, has to be at least top 2 in the history of cinema. And of course, the introduction where he's like, "I believe what doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger." I mean, come on. It's just absolutely incredible if this doesn't set you into what this character is about. And it's just a perfect sequel, too. It really takes the stakes of Batman Begins and elevates them to even further heights, bringing in all, especially with the Joker, and how he's used as the perfect foil against Batman. It's executed so brilliantly, and I could go on and on about how amazing these scenes are, but as I said, I'll try to keep it a little compact. But I love the opening sequence with Batman, or the first one he's in, with the Scarecrow, played by Cillian Murphy, of course. Obviously, great to see how fruitful that collaboration with Christopher Nolan has come all the way to 15 years later. But I just love the action sequence here. And of course, when he lands on the car, it's like one of the most badass moments in all of film. And just he's like, "What's the difference between me and you?" He's like, "I'm not wearing hockey pads." It's just so awesome. How can you not love the dialogue in this movie, one of the most quotable movies, and it seems crazy to think that a lot of these quotes kind of came out of thin air, especially there's so many, especially from Harvey Dent at that dinner, where I just love how brilliant that scene is, where Bruce is trying to figure out if Harvey Dent is someone that Gotham can really trust, and he's like scoping him out during this dinner with him and Rachel, of course, played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and of course the Russian ballerina that he has as his date. And just that line that just rings so poignantly true for the whole film, and really is indicative of the tragedy of Harvey Dent, where he says, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. And just the fact that this was thought up and hadn't been... I know my friend Brandon Fallett was mentioning that in the episode, where it's like, who would have thought that this was a line being used for the first time? It's so profound. It's so well thought out. Or, of course, you have the lines where Michael Caine's like, some men just want to watch the world burn. Sorry if I butchered the Cockney. If I had more time, I'd be able to do it. But, yeah, I mean, there's so many quotables in this movie. And, of course, just when Joker comes in, of course, in that meeting room for the first time, it's like, and I thought my jokes were bad. You know? Just so incredible. And... oh my goodness, the whole thing where Joker's kind of like setting up the story. It's like, you want to know how I got these scars? And he basically tells one story, and then of course later on when he's going after Harvey Dent and he's confronting Rachel, he tells a completely different story, which completely adds to the mystery and mystique of the Joker, where it's like, they even say it, like, down at the MCU, as they call it, no fingerprints, nothing to be identified by. This guy's a complete enigma, and that's what makes his presence even more compelling, because it's like, how does someone like this rise out of the darkness of the street, out of obscurity, and create all this chaos within the city? I think the conflict is so perfectly set up, and as I said, the perfect foil to Batman. It always comes back to that brilliant chase sequence on the Bat Bike, or whatever you want to call it. I just absolutely love that scene. I forget how good some of the action sequences are in this film, and I know some people have problems with some of the editing choices and action sequences in the first one, but you don't really feel that here at all. Everything's so fluid, so tight, so compact. I believe this was nominated for Best Film Editing, deservedly so. Probably should have won, if you ask me, but regardless, like when he's coming at him with the bike and he's like wants him to hit him, but he knows he won't because Batman will not break his code. It's just one of the most brilliant confrontations and use of psychological tension I've ever seen on film. And of course, I mean, you gotta mention the whole confrontation sequence in the holding cell between him and Batman. And just, of course, it's like, you'll see when the chips are down, these civilized people will eat each other up, and I just love how you can see his complete sense of anarchy come to full fruition, but also he knows the inherent nature of human beings, which is what makes all the decisions he makes so powerful. Like when it's like, someone will die if you don't reveal the identity of Batman. And people are put in these situations where it's like, it's either him or me. And I think that's what makes Joker in this film the greatest villain in all of cinema. I really don't think there's a better villain you can top than Heath Ledger's role in this. I mean, talk about a guy completely disappearing into a role, almost, seemingly to his downfall, unfortunately, before this film came out. But it's just unbelievable seeing someone so convincingly throw themselves into a role that has so much going on. And I heard it was a great time on set. It wasn't like there was anything wrong with him on set or anything like that. And it was just a good time filming this. And I'm sure it must have been incredible watching this or acting off of him in this movie, because literally, I mean, there's so many great performances in this, but Heath Ledger just overshadows everybody. I think Bale's great in this. I think Michael Caine's got some really great moments. Maggie Gyllenhaal, big upgrade from Katie Holmes in the first film. Morgan Freeman's got some great stuff, but really Gary Oldman gets a lot to do. And I don't know if I wouldn't criticize him faking his own death, but sometimes you could say it feels a bit. I don't think so, because the way they bring him back into the film really not only sets up the conflict for later on in the film, but also for the next film going forward. And I just think, especially at the end of this film, Gary Oldman acts his ass off. But really, Aaron Eckhart in this is absolutely amazing, because although you get the scenes with the Joker where obviously he switches the addresses of Harvey and Rachel, is just one of the greatest plot twists of all time. And I'm sure, I unfortunately knew the spoiler going in, but I'm sure seeing that for the first time, that must have blown the socks off people, because like, how do you conceive this? Like, this is so sadistic, so twisted, and so brilliant of a plan. And of course, yet again, another great quote with the guy who has the cell phone and the bomb rigged in his stomach. It's like, I just want my phone call. You know? It's so bitter, but it's so funny at the same time. As sick as everything that he's doing, it really does come through in a very humorous way and adds levity to a really, really dark situation. And of course, even the fact when he sets up the bombs on the boats, and either the criminals and civilians have that choice to choose whether to blow the other boat up, is absolutely amazing. And of course, rest in peace, Tiny Lister, man. When he throws the remote out the window, it's like, I should have done what you guys should have done a long time ago, or whatever. And it's just such a powerful moment to think that these people who are so criminalized are the ones that ended up being the most noble at the end. And of course, obviously, the other people don't end up blowing up the ship either. But still, like, their reactions, like, oh, they had their chance. You know, just the way, as he said, when the chips are down, you really see how these people truly feel. And you have to question, who is more evil? And is this inherently in our nature? And I think that's the whole point the Joker was trying to make, as sadistic as it is. Just the way he's able to manipulate everybody's greed and kind of throw it back in their face or otherwise. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. And I always wondered, like, if they had blown it up, would they have blown up their own boat? I'm glad we never find out, because I think obviously humanity triumphs at the end. But I always wondered, I'm like, knowing the Joker, there might have been that sixth sadistic twist where they just blow themselves up on the boat. Let me know what you guys think, if that was actually what he was thinking. Obviously, you know, it's a script, and it might not even say, but I think it's fun mentioning and worth thinking about. But to me, really, I think the fact that he wins with the downfall of Harvey Dent, how he takes Gotham's White Knight and brings it down to his and Batman's level, as he says. And I just think it's absolutely amazing when, you know, that scene where he kidnaps Gordon and his family and says that he's going to make Gordon watch one of them die. It's like, oh my goodness, the power dynamics on play in this movie are so powerful, so potent, so devastatingly real, even though this is all taking place in a fictitious city and universe. But it's just, these situations are brought to life in such a way that feels so palpable, and I think that's what makes the tragedy of The Dark Knight still, you know, retain to this day. You know, the fact that Batman has to take the fall for Harvey Dent, who really was the one who did the most wrongdoing, and how Gordon has to immortalize him. It is just like so sick and so upsetting when you watch the ending, but yet it's so triumphant and powerful. And of course, the whole thing where, you know, the whole tragedy with Bruce and Rachel's relationship as well certainly takes a big bearing on him in the next movie. Like, everything is set up so perfectly for a sequel. Whether we agree on The Dark Knight Rises bringing that fully to the extent that it could have is up to our own devices to decide for. But I just think the fact that this movie sets all the pieces in motion but still feels like such a great conclusion. Like that moment, he's like, he's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one they need right now. And Batman's running off, and the police start chasing him. And just the Hans Zimmer score, which is so iconic in so many ways. You could say one of the greatest scores of all time. Perhaps it's up there. And I don't think it got nominated for an Oscar, which is bullshit if it didn't, to be quite frank, because it is so iconic. Everyone knows that dun 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 dun, dun. You know, it's just it might be his most iconic score if you ask me. And I just think there's so many moving pieces on display that just exemplify what a genius Christopher Nolan is. I mean, that is what he is. And I think as much as people have loved Oppenheimer and have said it's his best movie, I couldn't disagree more. I think it's certainly near the top of his canon, but I don't think he'll ever top The Dark Knight. This is a once-in-a-lifetime movie. And you obviously see, like, I don't think that there's a single movie from the 21st century, whether this is your absolute favorite or not, I don't think there's a single one that has had the level of cultural impact, has had the level of memorability, that has had the level of acclaim from critics to general audiences alike. It is a movie that is unanimously loved all across the board, and one that I am still glad to say holds up. I wish I had a little bit better of experience with it. I think I liked it like slightly less, but I'm certainly going to go through the trilogy within the next year and watch it within that time frame, because I absolutely love what Nolan did here with this trilogy, and especially with Batman Begins 2, which I think might be the greatest superhero origin film of all time. And I think we have to thank Batman and Robin for even getting us to this point, because I don't think this film would have been made if that film wasn't such a massive failure. And yeah, I mean, so many films are indebted to this. So many comic book movies, so many crime thrillers, so many movies. One of the most influential movies of the 21st century, and I think all across the board can be generally agreed upon as the best. And of course, I'm going to give The Dark Knight a 10 out of 10. I mean, you knew it from the beginning of this video. There was no other score I could give this titanic film, really. I mean, this really is an achievement like no other. No comic book movie will ever be better than this. I refuse to believe. I don't think anyone's ever given this much attention or care to a superhero property before, and hardly will ever get that attention and care again. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about The Dark Knight. Of course, I know so many of you who are watching this channel absolutely love it, and it's one of your favorite movies. But still, let me know what you think. Did you get a chance to see it in theaters when it came out in 2008? Did you get a chance to see it in theaters last weekend for Batman Day? Would love to hear that as well. And of course, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Of course, if you're new here for the first time, going to be finishing out my reviews from the Toronto International Film Festival next up with Rustin, so be sure to look for that in the next day or so. And yeah, guys, until then, I will see you later. Take it easy now.